Baldelli. Rocco is going to have to wear it someplace else because the Twins fired him Monday after 7 seasons. We'll look at why it happened, who else is at fault, and what might come next, aside from getting locked on Twins, that is.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to source for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show still of the Imperial Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. And don't you ever forget it, even if we go like 2 weeks without a show. Don't forget, hit like and subscribe where applicable. I'm Dave Brown, an MLB writer who has not been fired lately. I'm also a BBWA member and a voter for Baseball's Hall of Fame. Across the great plains of cyberspace is Brandon Warne, who has lots of irons in the fire, including this podcast. Brandon was a Twins fan who became a Twins writer, and now he's both still. You can find Brandon's written work at the Access Twins newsletter, and you can find mine. Sorry, I think I a little spit there. Sorry. At the Pitcher List and elsewhere. I'm out of practice. On this podcast, the Twins have pushed the button on Rocco. Not the dog, not Brandon's dog, but the manager, who had led the franchise to some pretty cool milestones like division titles and postseason success. Remember that? Postseason success? You didn't have that before Rocco, unless you count Tom Kelly like 35 years ago. But this business is all about what you've done for me lately. And lately, the Twins have stunk, to put it nicely. So we'll look at the success and the failure, the Rocco regime, pin the blame on some other people for the failures, in addition to Rocco, and get a really early glimpse of what might be next for him and the team now that they are not the same thing anymore. But first, this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy registered shots. Did I read that right? Go to www.5hourenergy.com. So that's the number 5 hour energy, and you can put it all caps and it'll show up in the URL.com. Is that on Amazon or Amazon?
Or Amazon. You can also get it there. I used to always joke, by the way, they should have a 5 hour lethargy. And then a friend of mine said, that's beer. So, yeah, no real need to create a whole new product. But 5 hour, yeah, it's good stuff for when you need a little pep in your step.
Well, we had a little bit of lethargy there for a couple of weeks where we didn't do a show. Maybe we shouldn't address the elephant in the room, but
we will eventually.
We will. But hey, we're here now.
Yeah.
But Rocco is no longer here. I can't say I'm surprised, but it certainly felt like somebody could get fired. Just the way the season ended. Not a whole lot of energy. Actually, there were some good things. The last turn through the rotation was great. Can Pete Mackey stay? So there's that. But they lost 92 games. The last 2 seasons as a whole were pretty dreadful. As Dan Hayes said in The Athletic, it kind of all started when the Pohlads decided we're going to cut payroll by 30%, and this is coming off of the playoff season. That really got things off to kind of a icky start in 2024. And just to say, that's the only thing that happened, and here we are, that's not true. Rocco's manager for 7 seasons, and that's a long time in the parlance of Major League Baseball. It's especially for a guy who won 3 divisions and got the team some postseason success for the first time, as I mentioned, since Tom Kelly. So I wouldn't have been surprised if they kept Rocco for lots of reasons, starting with they have to pay him unless he gets another manager job. Or I don't know exactly how that works, but he's got a contract that they said they were going to pick up. I think they announced it in June. So that's kind of a weird thing that I would have thought that the Pohlads would not want to pay a guy that they are going to fire, but that's what they're doing. Brandon, what was your first reaction when you heard that Rocco got the bye-bye?
I'd say surprised but not stunned. Can you say that and have it not be talking out of both sides of your mouth? Because, like, I always thought maybe Falvey and, to a lesser extent, Zoll and Rocco Baldelli were kind of a package deal. And they don't want to become the Chicago Bears. And I don't mean to twist the knife, but as someone explained it,
they just beat the Raiders. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they beat the Raiders. But no, as someone explained to me once, it was like they were firing their GM, firing their coach, and picking a new quarterback on like 3-year intervals and never actually syncing those things up together. And that's something in today's game where usually if you have a power, we just saw the White Sox dump a large portion of their staff, Ethan Katz and Marcus Tams and Drew Butera, who I think could be a factor somewhere in the coaching staff in Minnesota someday. I thought maybe if they were going to give Rocco the boot, that it might be a massive bloodletting, not unlike the trade deadline. And maybe the trade deadline is when this decision was made. I think, in the chat that you and I are in, where there's some pretty smart baseball people who are pretty low profile, they know what they're talking about, but they're just not, high profile people. It was more along the lines of like, maybe Falvey is just saying, hey, we'll get you paid for next year, but there's no guarantees that you're going to have this job. And when they said, though, in the release that I got, that Jeremy Zoll and Derek Falvey, I say that in the wrong order, but that they would head up the search, to me suggests that they're not in any imminent danger. And basically there had to be a fall guy. And so are we to take, there's a lot of questions I have that I think will kick around, but are we to take that they didn't announce any other departures on the staff, that they're likely to promote from within, which I think would be vastly, wildly unpopular and for a number of reasons. I also would like to get into, like, when do you think the tide turned? Was it the trade deadline? Was it the, any time since then? I'd be eager. And I almost thought, we should get someone who's been in the clubhouse. I don't know if Dan Hayes would come on. I love Dan, and Dan is a great dude. Maybe he would come on. We could ask him, when did you sense the tide turned on whether or not Rocco would return next year? Did they know when they exercised his contract that he had a chance to not be back? There's just lots of layers to it. And all of it, to me, though, falls under the ledger of, it probably won't matter that much until new ownership comes along, unless something changes drastically. Now, I will allow the fact that potentially Joe Pohlad is the good Pohlad. I don't want to sound like I'm going to dismiss him out of hand. But I also felt like for a while there that he got pushed to the front to kind of be the fall guy for some unpopular family decisions or unpopular things baseball-wise that may or may not have had to do extensively or only with baseball. So with all of that said, I think ownership is the biggest culprit. And that's not to blame Joe Pohlad directly. It might be a Jim issue. It might be a family issue. But I don't think Rocco was the issue. And I think it was more along the lines of, like, just time for a change. And I've got some theories on what kind of guy, what kind of manager I think they're going to target. We'll get into all this. But to circle back, I would say surprised but not stunned was my kind of takeaway when that email came through from the Twins.
I think their ideal manager, Jeremy Zoll's and Derek Falvey's ideal manager is Rocco. And that's why maybe it took as long as it did. It's not something they did during the season. That's why they said, let's give him the contract extension into 2026, because they didn't really want to fire him, because ideally, if they plan on making a lot of changes, do you have to fire the manager if the message is stale to the players who are there, if you're going to change a lot of the players? And they changed a lot of players already. You changed like 40% of the roster already. Figure that another huge chunk is going to be changing this winter too. So does it really matter?
Through sheer attrition, there's 40 man's going to be half new.
If the shtick is old, but the people that are going to be listening to it haven't heard it yet, is it really old? I remember when the White Sox fired Ozzie Guillen, and he'd won the World Series as their manager, and that was kind of a perfect storm. But he and Kenny Williams got into a power struggle, and Ozzie ended up losing. But I remember people saying at the time, well, is it a case where Ozzie's act wore thin? And I think that certainly was true for the front office for Kenny, but I don't know, if they went and changed all the players anyway. So
it might just be more fan appeasement. And honestly, that doesn't really fly here either, because most fans, you look at the comment section at your own peril, it's more along the lines of, hey, I'm not coming back until the ownership group changes. And that's, for the most part, not true. If the Twins win 92 games next year and are relevant when the Vikings start, they'll have fans in the stands. Like, it's, again, you care about the butts in the seats, not the faces. And people don't always vote with their dollars like they claim they're going to. But to some extent, running it back with Rocco after 2 straight down years just was not going to be good optics. And with that said, I mean, again, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised, but not shocked. I did think maybe he would get a lame duck year where he knew he was managing for his job from stem to stern.
Let's take our first break here, and then when we come back, we'll dive back into the Minnesota Twins without Rocco Baldelli. He has been fired.
Well, we get a new one. I mean, sort of. It's from a company we're familiar with, but caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny little shot. You can take it anywhere you go and get that boost when you need it. When I worked overnights, by the way, that was invaluable for me. I was a much younger man back then. I was probably about 22 when I got that job and about 24 when I stopped. Notice I didn't last very long because overnights are brutal, but 5-hour energy helped get me through. And I love every flavor. I love trying different flavors, the berry, the lemon, and the lime. That's a callback to a joke with my wife, so just stick with me on that. But when I reach for a 5-hour energy shot, it's usually because I've been chasing my kids around, especially when they get me up at 5:45, and then we're trying to record a show here after dark, which in Minnesota, it's not dark that late. So still, I'm trying to stay awake here after chasing my kids to do a podcast. So I do 5-hour energy for every single one of you listeners and viewers. You are welcome. Okay, I'm totally kidding. But enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in store or online. 5hourenergy.com, or check them out. They're on Amazon as well. Then another fun one that we got is Zip Picks. It's Zip Picks toothpicks, whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or, for me, it's an energy boost. Zip Picks has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine infused toothpicks. You can see me holding my handy dandy little container here. For nicotine users, Zip Picks provides a discreet way to satisfy those cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. You can be very, very discreet. Zippix can also be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. It's available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. Or if you're like me and you need energy without the crash, and boy, we've been talking about energy a lot here in the last minute or so, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. They gave me this nifty little container. I'm opening the wrong end. So of course, a guy like me can definitely figure something like that out. But I shake out a toothpick if I can. Here we go. And I kind of look like Scott Hall here from the old NWO days. But I love using them. They taste great. You got a nice little flavor to them, almost like, you remember, Dave, the little Listerine things you'd put under your tongue back in the day, those little strips? Kind of taste like that. Yes. And so I've used these toothpicks since they sent them to me a couple of months ago, and I'm already on my second order. So I've been absolutely delighted. And there's some fun flavors. Peppermint watermelon, which is the one I have right now. Peppermint watermelon ice. Actually tastes great. It's a surprising blend, but I think you'll really like it. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com and use code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. You must be 21 or older to order. Most of our listeners, I would suspect, would be, but also warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's Zippix Toothpicks, Zippix Toothpicks.com, promo code locked on. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix Toothpicks. Dave, I'm here to tell you it is very difficult to talk with a toothpick in your mouth, so I'm going to set that aside for right now.
Dusty Baker can do it.
Yeah, well, I'm no Dusty Baker, that's for sure.
I'm not trying to get Aaron Gleeman tossed off the athletic staff, but if he's someday, if he's not a journalist anymore, exactly like a reporter journalist, he would make a good Twins historian. I think
Clyde Deppner's getting up there.
So he puts stuff into perspective. He had some tweets today about the Twins in the Target Field era. It's not all that good as far as the wins and losses go.
I covered a lot of those teams. It's I think he said 24th by record in that time frame.
Yeah, that sounds right. Rocco's overall record is a little over 500 with the Twins, and the last two seasons have been kind of icky bad. 92 losses this year, but they did some stuff. They did win 3 divisions, although they won 3 division titles, but yet I think they've had a losing record 4 out of the last 5 years, which I guess it's technically possible, but it's just pretty amazing to me that it would be that those two things are both true. And they won the playoff series. That should have changed everything. And they beat the Yankees a couple games.
A season series even.
Yeah, in the season series.
Yeah.
I thought everything was fixed. What happened?
Well, like Dan Hayes said, $30 million cut off the payroll when you've already sunk that much into Carlos Correa. And again, that's where it fell apart for me was if you tell Derek Falvey we're cutting $30 million from your budget, he never signs Carlos Correa. Let's be frank about that. And then so is it fair to say it's almost like slicing $60 million off your payroll because you signed Carlos Correa and then had to subtract Correa's money in theory from the budget? It's almost like when you're driving for a touchdown and you throw a pick 6, there's that swing of points, the hypothetical swing of points. Similar to that, where it's like, oh, geez, if I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford Carlos Correa a year from now, I would have, signed a good first baseman or someone to a 1-year deal or a decent pitcher to a 1-year, any number of hypotheticals that you can think about. And so that significantly hamstrung them to the point where they couldn't add depth to the roster. Now, I didn't think going in to the last 2 seasons that depth was going to be an issue, but frankly, it was. I thought, oh, yeah, they've got Jose Miranda and Royce Lewis and Ed Julian and Brooks Lee and Correa and all these guys in the infield and Ty France, and maybe they can fall back on Julian. And you come to find out that half those guys can't play baseball anymore, and that's an issue. And if you can't address that depth more than, Harrison Bader was basically hitting the lottery with what happened, and it still didn't matter because they stunk. If they knew ahead of time they weren't going to be able to put a team around Correa that they thought they were going to, things are different, way different. And that's all I got to say about that.
And, some of you mentioned some of them already. The players that they've drafted, the young players that they've tried to develop have not exactly developed in the way that we thought. Even, when we look at Matt Wallner, who looks like he could still be a success.
Maybe technically is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just saying in the future, right. There's still some meat on that bone, and, there's a big, maybe a 40 home run season in there. But, Larnach has not really, Kirilov was a disaster because he got hurt. Larnach didn't get hurt, but didn't really develop into anything where you're like, all right, we got to get this guy more at bats. I mean, they did give him more at bats, but it just didn't produce much.
Yeah, to what end? I mean, he was a
T-Shaw, yeah, right. T-Shaw looks like a home run.
Yeah,
but you know,
I mean, but here's the deal: Keishel needs to not do what Edouard Julien did, which was have a great first year and then never go any further. Like there's certainly question marks everywhere where it's like some of these guys got to develop. I don't think they're necessarily doing anything wrong in player development, but the people who say, "Oh man, they don't develop enough guys," they might be onto something there.
I don't know. I didn't get too terribly. I mean, I was happy to see Taj Bradley put up a good start and Mick Abel put up a good start.
Abel looked terrific. I mean, revenge game and all that, but he looked terrific.
You know, and Bailey had a nice last start. The whole thing with the running through the rotation last time, I don't know. I've seen. I hope it's not fool's gold. Because I think we've all seen, and it's not just the Twins, if you look at other teams, and I think, as we said before, it would do Twins fans some good to check out other teams too.
Yes.
You, just for comparison's sake and for context's sake, I've seen people have good starts or glimpses of whatever happening in September when it's kind of a weird time of year. And then you kind of get excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to spring training and it's kind of the same old crud again. And I don't know that I'm encouraged, I guess, a little bit, but it's still, I'm pretty circumspect about most of these guys that they've brought over. I don't know that I'm not saying that like there was a better trade out there. I don't know what it would be, but we'll see. We'll see if these guys are, if this is a jumping off point, a pivot point for being better players in 2026, or if it was just going against people playing out the string and getting lucky.
Before we head to our last break, can we just discuss the hilarity of the season being as brutal as it was and game 162 goes to extras? And they started out swinging at everything. It was 21 straight strikes for Sanchez, which was tied for the most in MLB this season. And I thought, you know what? They're going to play this thing in a tight 1 hour and 50 minutes.
Right.
They end up going to extras. And it still went fast. And Kepler homered, and I think Harrison Bader scored the walk-off run. And I mean, it was a hilarious, ironic end to just a debacle of a season. And I don't want to let that slip away too far before we at least have a chuckle over it.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I don't know if there's a saying about, you know, the bus was running or whatever, but people were in a hurry to get, I mean, the Phillies were in a hurry to get on with it because of the playoffs, the Twins in a hurry to kind of end things. And I kind of had that feeling about Rocco's, his influence on the team toward the end. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but I think maybe he's burned out a little bit. And, I don't know that that's true, but maybe, we talked earlier about managers, their message kind of falling on deaf ears after a while and it getting stale. Maybe it gets stale to the manager. It's like, I don't have any more tricks up my sleeve here with either with what I've been given or, how these guys want to respond. And, I suspect that they still have some good coaches on the staff. And I hope that whatever is next, that some of them are part of it. I can't imagine, though, I don't think like Jace Tingler is going to be, maybe somebody like Jace Tingler who isn't Jace Tingler is going to be the next manager of the team. I don't know. Hank Conger doesn't have any experience, but they kind of rave about his personality and the respect that he has in the clubhouse and how good he might be over 162 games. I don't know.
Former catcher, man. They love their former catchers.
They do. So let's take our last break, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Rocco getting fired.
Well, I do have to talk about Nutrafol. I'm taking my hat off here because people can see this ridiculous head of hair that I'm sporting right now. Thank you, in large part, to Nutrafol. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are many, many hair products out there, and it's hard to know which ones actually do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. I am married to a beautician, a cosmetologist, a cosmopolitan. I don't know what you call it, but she raves about this stuff. And she's been telling me about Nutrafol for years before we even decided to partner up with them. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. And now Nutrafol is the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. Maybe that's why Rocco got fired. Maybe something to think about. But you can feel great about what you're putting into your body too, since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed, studied, and NSF Contents certified, the gold standard in third-party certification for supplements. And my wife was actually telling me they have separate versions for men's hair growth and women's hair growth. So they have different formulas based on what's going to work for you. So again, she raves about Nutrafol nonstop. She is always talking about not only the newest things, but the most effective things. I know as a bachelor, I would buy the cheapest hair gel and the cheapest shampoo. We're guys, that's what we do. But if you're trying to keep that hair growth going or to get it going again, because let's face it, some of us, we lose some momentum on the hair growth side. That's where Nutrafol can really step in. It's, again, NSF certified, backed by peer-reviewed studies. So you know that the science is sound. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB.
Brandon, did you this was a few days ago now, but there was a story in the
No, I did not read that story. I know which one you're going to ask me. About the Polad family and yes. No.
Did you buy any of that? You didn't read it, but
I didn't even read it. I've been, full disclosure, we did take a brief hiatus with the show, and I was feeling pretty burnt out. I don't want to say this team broke me, but full disclosure, again, the process of putting together a regular show for a team that everyone's ticked about, and it's just a long year, it wore on me to the point where I wasn't sure I was going to do the show anymore, and I needed some time to think about it. And so I obviously I worked the games. In fact, I got one more name drop in the final game of the year from Corey Provis, but it was a tough year, man. And so I have had limited consumption of Twins writing for the past maybe 10, 12 days.
There was one thing about the story that sort of clicked in my head as it relates to Rocco getting fired.
Yeah.
And that's the whole bringing in the additional investors. If their ownership is willing to pay, and managers don't make like a ton of money. It's not, it's maybe more than it's
ARB2 money, ARB1 money.
Yes. It's more than the major league minimum, but it's not like a huge amount. Maybe that is a good sign that they are willing to relax the payroll for the upcoming season.
The hiring freeze on the 26th.
Yes, the hiring freeze. That's a great way to put it. That was the only thing in that.
We're phasing out shortstops. We're pivoting to no shortstops. Well, that sounds like the White Sox.
Can you cover a little bit up the middle, and so we don't have to have 9 players on the diamond?
We're pivoting to all first basemen. I think we're flying a little close to the sun with you there as a White Sox person, but yeah. If they can show that they're willing to invest more, then it's things change a little bit.
Things change maybe a little bit, but you said something too that sort of struck me as an issue. I don't know that it matters like who they bring in as a manager in terms of getting the fans to be happy, because I think the only thing that's really going to make them happy, A, is that somebody else owns the team. B, if they, whatever they do, it turns into wins next season. And I just don't know that is something that we're on the verge of doing. I think
Al Davis, though, it's just win, baby. If for whatever reason Alan Roden and Austin Martin get on base in front of Byron Buxton and they keep some pitchers and you
that
win.
Could happen.
Yeah, I mean,
that could happen.
How much? Not to switch the point, but how much does the collapse of the Tigers, the Guardians being thoroughly mid but still winning, getting to the playoffs and stealing the division there, like how much does that give you hope that even if you can be just decent next year and play to your talent level? I mean, frankly, if the Twins had played to their talent level the last 2 years, we're not having this conversation, right? Like,
no,
frankly,
it is. I was looking at how bad the Giants were down the stretch. They went like 7-19 against the teams that they absolutely, if they had just split against these teams that they could not beat.
Yeah,
they would have. Bob Melvin would have kept his job. They'd have been in the playoffs by like 4 games. I feel the same way about the Twins.
Well, it sounds like the Twins last year, especially.
Yes, like if they just decided not to cut payroll by 30%, things would have been a whole lot different. I feel the one thing about the AL Central is still bad.
Yep.
You were kind of getting to that point.
The AL at large is not great.
No, it's not. It's if you look
the
at
Astros collapsed. The Mariners are the Mariners. Like, I think they can win, but they also just have a history of not.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. But the very many, I mean, the Guardians are where they are because the Tigers collapsed and because the Astros collapsed. And even though I kind of like what the Mariners, I like the cut of their jib, but I don't think that anybody in the American League should win the World Series. I actually kind of think that we should have 2 National League teams in the World Series because most of the good teams are over there. So
yeah, if you wanted to do Dodgers and Brewers, I'd be okay with that. I kind of want to see either the Blue Jays or the Mariners against the Brewers. That's my dream World Series at this point.
We've got more to unpack with what's going to happen next with Twins management and Twins manager.
I have an idea, by the way, for a show, and we're on-air production meeting. I think you and I should do a draft where we each take 10 candidates for who the next manager will be, and we can go wildly off the board for like if we get to number 9 and we say Joe Mauer, that's not out of bounds, right?
Yeah,
I think we should do a back and forth, like a snake draft or for candidates, and then some kind of bragging rights if my candidate or your candidate wins. And if neither of our top 20 guys make it, maybe we really should have seriously considered pulling the plug on this thing because we are not as locked on Twins as we thought we were.
A snake draft, so like Torey Lovello. That's not what you mean, though, is it?
No, and it turns out he's getting to stay in Arizona, which, I think that's a pretty good ball club. I would hate to be in the NL West for any reason whatsoever, but
really,
he's a good. He seems like a pretty good manager to me. I also think Bob Melvin could be an interesting candidate for the Twins, but not to, as our friend Sully says, what does he say? Got to keep your powder. Something with the powder, like don't
powder your nose.
No. It's don't talk about things you're going to talk about in the show when you're doing an off-air production meeting because then you lose your powder. Why can't I remember the metaphor? I'm out of practice, I guess.
Here's something that we need to remember. We want to thank you all for making Locked On Twins your first listen today. For your second listen, find the all-new, all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. And the playoffs are going to start soon. When do the playoffs start?
Tomorrow.
Get local analysis on a national scale. Are there like 4 games in a row in the middle of the day?
Doesn't that sound great? Like, I love October baseball, man. It's the of the crowd. It energizes me so much.
Sounds like you got to clear your throat. Get local analysis on the national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Lockdown MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts like this one. So Rocco Baldelli is out. We'll talk more about Rocco Baldelli later and who the new Rocco Baldelli is. But in the meantime, for my friend Brandon Warne, this is Dave Brown. Wish you all a very pleasant good evening. Saying we will Alexei Casilla tomorrow night, and we mean it.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah. Yes.